Good evening, everybody. In this video, we're going to talk about personal responsibility. Occasionally, there are accidents out in nature in Taiwan, and I say occasionally because it doesn't happen nearly as often as you think it does. Anytime anyone is stranded, needs help, or dies out in nature, it becomes a major media sensation here. And anytime that happens, the public engages in a hot debate. One side says, well, people should be free to go and do any stupid thing that they want as long as they're not hurting other people and they enjoy themselves. And the other side says this people's suicidal quest for recreation is putting a strain on the state economy. Now, although these are hot debates and these people are arguing, they're both actually agreeing on the same thing. And that is, what happens out in nature is your own fault. That's right. If my dumbass self went up into the mountains or the rivers and ended up dying there, it would be 100% my fault. It would be because of mistakes that I made. Nature is a brute force and, of course, incapable of accepting liability for this. And the government, well, just is a non-party. However, under Taiwan law, the government can sometimes be inexplicably blamed for this. And also, in almost every single case that I see it, the media and officials tend to blame nature for the cause of accident. This usually falls in two categories. One, they blame the weather, or two, they say that this specific area is extremely dangerous and nobody has any business being there. It is closed, and anybody who enters there is now a criminal. But both of these perspectives are wrong, and I will tell you why. The key factor is not the location, it is not the weather, it's not your experience, and it is not your equipment. Key factor is your judgment. At the end of the day, any situation that did cause somebody to have an accident, be it me, knock on wood, or anyone else, it came down to a decision that we made. If I go up a river and then suddenly it starts to rain very heavily and a flood catches me and washes me away and I end up drowning, that is my fault. I f***ed up. Yeah. I would have first failed to take into consideration the weather and second failed to take the appropriate measures when it did start to rain, which in most cases is just go somewhere high and wait it out. If it takes you 3 days, it does not matter, just wait it out. The exception goes when you're in the very high mountains and are at risk of hypothermia, which of course still means that you f***ed up because it means you failed to take into account the temperature. And f***ing up is not purely in the realm of amateur. For example, Uli Steck, widely regarded as one of the best mountain climbers in history, died on Mount Everest a few years ago. He f***ed up, failed to account for something, and ended up being buried in an avalanche. Nature is just a force, and you either respect it or you don't, and those that don't can often find themselves in difficult situations. In Taiwan, the culture is to absolve the victim of any blame and place it all on the environment. However, here's a list of situations that commonly come up in Taiwan, which I will now say are not nature's fault at all and purely the fault of the individual. For example, if you go 10 kilometers down the beach during a typhoon and then a typhoon comes and it traps you there, you f***ed up. You made a mistake. You failed to account for your own speed. You failed to account for the storm surge, which travels in front of the typhoon, and failed to account for the general unpredictability of typhoons, which means they can arrive earlier or later than you expect. What this means, of course, is that even when the typhoon is more than a day away, it's better not to go into any area that you don't have an easy extraction from. This, of course, if something happens, for example, you hurt your leg and need to spend the night there, what would be relatively a simple extraction the next day is now impossible, and a non-life-threatening situation just became a life-threatening one. So even if you left before the typhoon came and had planned to come out long before it arrived, if you're stuck there when there's a typhoon, you f***ed up. It's your fault. Same goes if you're hiking up in the mountains. If you are on a 5-day hike and on the 4th day there is a typhoon, it is your fault. We know weeks in advance that there is at least the possibility of a typhoon. To claim that you don't know that there's even a possibility shows negligence in research on your part. If you look at the information available and you decide that the probability is 1 in 10 that there'll be a typhoon during your trip and you decide to go anyway, well, there's a 9 to 10 chance that you'll be okay, but there's also a 1 in 10 chance that you f***ed up. This is not to disparage anybody who has been caught in that situation. F***ing up is part of the human experience. What I really want to do is just change the framing and narrative around these situations, because as long as the focus is on the environment and not on the people, then what's going to happen is the government will just close the environment. However, the environment just does what it does, completely irrespective if we exercise good judgment or not. Another common example is drowning in perfectly benign bodies of water, say in a pier or in a waterfall pool, or just by the side of the river. What commonly happens is somebody who has no intention of swimming at all gets close to the water, ends up slipping and falling in with an unintentional entry into the water. Now, while this is completely unintentional and everybody calls it an accident, it's still a f*** up. When exercising good judgment, you have to recognize that ups do happen, which is why if you are ever near the edge of a body of water, if you do not know how to swim and are at risk for drowning, you should be wearing a life jacket. This includes if you are fishing on the side of the pier, on a rock, or if you're going to look at a waterfall pool, taking photos, or on a boat, or in any other situation where a misstep could place you in a dangerous situation, you need to be wearing a life jacket. This is also when we cross the river in any condition, we do so in a place where if we up and if we fall, we will not be put in a compromising situation like swept down a dangerous rapid or over a waterfall. Deep pools, fishing piers, rivers are not really inherently dangerous in any way. However, in these locations, people are at risk of committing bad judgment. If there's a sieve in the river and you end up getting swept under a rock and drowning, this is again your fault. You failed to identify the signs that identify these hazards and chose to cross the river in a place that wasn't suitable for you. If you're rappelling down from a cliff and a rock falls on you, this is again your fault. You did not choose a good location to rappel in. Now, there are some exceptions to the it's your fault rule, and these has to do with group dynamics. For example, when you join a tour and you pay for a tour and hire a professional, you are transferring the responsibility of judgment to the tour leader. In some cases, maybe you didn't up and it's not your fault, it's actually the fault of your leader. Situations like this would include improper rigging of cables, putting somebody in a situation that is beyond their abilities, or failing to provide the proper protective equipment for people who need it. Situations where there is a hierarchy and a group dynamic but you are still at fault is when you just run out and do something stupid or ignore the instructions of the person who is supposed to keep you safe. However, in all of these situations, there is one underlying theme. Either you f***ed up or somebody else did. In none of these situations is it the fault of nature for just being what it is, or the liability of the state to protect you while you're out in nature. These are all decisions made by individuals in the moment, and the best the state can do, which they have actually been lapsing a bit in this responsibility, is to prepare people for being in the outdoors, and this is best done at early stages during childhood. I myself do quite well in nature, and I don't have any specialized training. What I did do is grow up in the rural US in a society that didn't try to prohibit me from going outside as a child. In fact, they actively encouraged me to go out hiking, camping, swimming, and in general just playing in the great outdoors. The result of this is I got to go outside, run and play, and hurt myself as a child at an age where that kind of thing would still recover very quickly, so that now I have that experience and I'm much less likely to hurt myself as an adult. Which, to be honest, is now much more terrifying since I know it's going to take weeks and months to recover instead of just days. Now, I can already see the comments before I even finish the videos. Lots of people are going to be writing, well, that's fine. Go out, hurt yourself, whatever. But don't go calling for help when you need a rescue. This logic is actually extremely flawed, and it's very important that there is a rescue service and that that service is free. And because so many people are severely worried about the budget in the description, it makes me worry that Taiwanese firefighters and rescuers are severely underpaid. And while of course there is a budget issued for rescue and fire services, you need to understand that this is absolutely minuscule compared to the economic activity that outdoor sports bring in. In most places, it's around 5% of the economy or more. In the same sense that cities couldn't exist without fire services, neither can outdoor sports. So the entire industry, from the tour services to the equipment services to the lodging and transportation services and the manufacturing for these products, which I hope to see a lot more in Taiwan in the future, could not exist without these services. And this small investment in emergency services creates huge economic rewards throughout the economy. Just like it's important for the Coast Guard to go and assist a cargo vessel when it is in distress, it's also important for them to go and assist somebody on an SUP when they are in distress. The outdoor recreation economy is in its infancy now in Taiwan and is set to make huge gains in the future and absolutely explode once the COVID-19 crisis is resolved. Free rescue services are an essential part of the development in that economy, and it's also important that they're free because if it's not free, people won't call them. In the United States, where outdoor recreation is an integral part of the economy and accounts for more than 5% of domestic spending, rescue services are free. This is in a country with the absolute worst medical system in the world. Ambulances to your home or on the street can cost you thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars, and yet still wilderness rescue is free, and this is because none of that economic output and none of those activities could exist without the rescue services. Now here's a quick recap to say why these things are important. 1. Anything that happens out in nature is your fault. It is not the responsibility of the government to keep you safe or make sure you make good decisions out in nature. The main point of saying that is that the laws that do shift liability to the state for your well-being in nature need to be immediately revoked. Those are the laws. Because of that liability, much of Taiwan is closed to recreation. It means that people just can't go out and have the good time that they want, but also that the industry is being stifled in very difficult ways, making it harder and harder to grow. And two, when accidents do happen, we need to look at these critically and look at the decisions that were made that led up to this accident. It's all too easy to just say, this is a dangerous place and that's why this accident happened. We learn nothing from that. It's much better to look at it and say, this is where that person went wrong. If you are ever in a similar situation, this is what you should do. So in the spirit of personal responsibility in nature, there is a petition down at the bottom asking the government to immediately revoke Article 36 and 60 of the Act for Tourism Development and open up the waters for all to have fun and enjoy and occasionally make mistakes. This is just a small step that only covers water. Much of the mountains are still closed for things like rock climbing, for example. The huge industry that Taiwan could have for things like Via Ferretis and big wall climbing is not there due to regulation, and maybe I'll cover that in another video. But for now, please sign that petition. Let the government know that you are a big boy. You can go out and take care of yourself, and when you can't, you will man up and accept responsibility for the decisions that you've made. Okay, thanks a lot. See you next time.